They found her standing in the middle of the river before sunrise. The water reached only her ankles, yet everyone who saw her swore they could hear whispers rising from beneath the surface. She wasn't crying. She wasn't moving. She simply stood there, staring at the reflection that wasn't hers. When the first fisherman called her name, she slowly turned around. Around her waist was a single string of crimson beads. The same waist bead every elder in the village had sworn had disappeared over 200 years ago. The fisherman dropped his basket. He didn't wait to ask questions. He ran. By noon, the entire village knew one thing. The cursed waist bead had returned. And so had the spirit that came with it. But no one, not even the oldest man in the village, knew how a 19-year-old girl named Amara had come to wear it. That story began 3 weeks earlier. The village of Kuala rested between thick forests and endless fields of yam. Its people believed every tree had ears. Every river remembered. Every mountain watched. Children grew up learning that the world of humans was only one layer of existence. Beneath it lived unseen spirits. Some protected. Others waited patiently for mistakes. Among all the warnings parents gave their children, one rule stood above the rest. Never accept gifts from strangers after sunset. Especially if the stranger already knows your name. Amara laughed whenever she heard such stories. Unlike most girls her age, she questioned everything. If spirits exist, she would often tease her grandmother, "Why do they hide?" Her grandmother would only sigh. "They are not hiding. They are waiting for someone foolish enough to stop believing." Amara would smile and continue with her chores. To her, stories were simply stories. Old fears wrapped inside old traditions. Nothing more. She had bigger worries. Ever since her father disappeared while hunting 3 years earlier, life had become difficult. Her mother struggled to feed the family. Every day before sunrise, Amara walked deep into the forest to gather herbs, wild fruits, and firewood to sell in the market. She dreamed of saving enough money to leave the village someday. She wanted a life beyond dusty roads and whispered superstitions. She believed hard work, not spirits, changed destiny. If only she had returned home before sunset that day. Rain had delayed her journey. By the time she finished gathering firewood, dark clouds had swallowed the sky. Birds had stopped singing. Even the insects had grown strangely quiet. She hurried along the narrow forest path. Then she noticed something impossible. An old woman was sitting beneath an iroko tree. No one sat beneath that tree. No one. Children were forbidden from even looking directly at it. Yet there she was. Perfectly calm. Wearing white cloth untouched by mud. Her skin looked older than dry earth itself. Long silver hair rested over her shoulders. Around her neck hung dozens of strange charms carved from bone, ivory, shells, and polished wood. Her eyes. Her eyes were unlike anything Amara had ever seen. One reflected daylight. The other reflected moonlight. The old woman smiled. "I've been waiting for you, Amara." Amara froze. Her heartbeat stumbled. "How do you know my name?" The woman ignored the question. "You walk this path every Tuesday." Amara's stomach tightened. That was true. "You leave home before sunrise." True again. "You still blame yourself for your father's disappearance." Amara took one step backward. "Who are you?" The old woman slowly stood. Although she appeared ancient, every movement carried impossible grace. "I have had many names." She smiled. "But people once called me the Keeper of Threads." Amara had never heard the title before. She forced herself to speak confidently. "If you're asking for money, I don't have any." The old woman laughed softly. "The things I seek cannot be bought." A cold wind passed between them. Leaves circled their feet. The forest had become unnaturally silent. Even the rain had stopped. Then the old woman reached into a small woven basket. She removed something wrapped carefully inside faded cloth. When she unfolded it, dozens of tiny crimson beads glowed like drops of fresh blood. Each bead shimmered although no sunlight reached them. Amara couldn't look away. "They're beautiful. They are alive." Amara frowned. "What?" The old woman lifted the waist bead gently. "This belonged to the first daughter." "I don't understand." "You don't need to." She stepped closer. "I have searched many villages. Many generations. It has finally chosen another keeper." Before Amara could react, the woman tied the waist bead gently around her waist. The beads felt unexpectedly warm. Almost like human skin. Amara instinctively reached for them. The old woman grabbed her wrist. Her grip was unbelievably strong. Then she whispered words that would haunt Amara forever. Never remove this. Amara laughed nervously. Why? If it breaks. The old woman's voice became almost inaudible. Do not look behind you. The laughter disappeared from Amara's face. What happens if I remove it? The old priestess stared directly into her eyes. For 3 nights. They will hear your name. Who? No answer. Instead, the old woman smiled. The kind of smile that carried centuries of sorrow. You still ask the wrong questions. A sudden clap of thunder exploded overhead. Amara instinctively covered her face. Only for a second. When she looked again, the old woman was gone. No footprints. No basket. Nothing. Only silence. Amara ran all the way home. She told no one. Not her mother. Not her grandmother. Not even her closest friend, Ada. How could she? Who would believe such madness? She convinced herself she had imagined everything. An exhausted mind. Too much time alone. That had to be it. Except, the waist bead remained around her waist. She tried to untie it. The knot wouldn't move. She fetched a small knife. The blade snapped. She tried pulling harder. Nothing. The beads seemed fused together. As though they had grown there. That night, she dreamed of drums. Hundreds of drums. Beating from somewhere deep beneath the earth. She saw women dressed in white dancing around a giant baobab tree. Their faces were hidden. One by one, they turned toward her. Every single woman wore the same crimson waist bead. Then they all spoke together. Do not let it touch the ground. Amara woke up screaming. The waist bead was burning hot. So hot that steam rose from her skin. Her mother rushed into the room. What happened? It was just a nightmare. Her mother touched her forehead. No fever. Amara forced a smile. I'm all right. But she wasn't. Because the drums hadn't stopped. She could still hear them. Faintly. Somewhere outside. Boom, boom, boom. The next morning, she followed the sound into the forest. The deeper she walked, the louder the drums became. Until suddenly, they stopped. She found herself standing in a clearing she had never seen before. In the middle stood an abandoned shrine covered in vines. The carved wooden figures surrounding it had no faces. Someone, or something, had carefully scraped them away. On the altar lay fresh flowers. Fresh. Someone had been there recently. Then she noticed footprints. Bare footprints. Dozens of them. Leading into the shrine. None leading out. A voice whispered behind her. You should not have come. Amara spun around. No one was there. Then another whisper. Closer this time. They've begun to remember you. A hand touched her shoulder. She screamed. And turned to find her grandmother. Her grandmother's face had gone pale the instant she saw the crimson waist bead. For a long moment, the old woman said nothing. Then, in a trembling voice barely louder than the wind, she whispered. I prayed this day would never come. Amara stared at her grandmother in disbelief. You know this waist bead? The old woman's wrinkled hands began to tremble. Instead of answering, she grabbed Amara's wrist so tightly it almost hurt. We must leave this place. But now. Her grandmother looked around the abandoned shrine as though something invisible was watching them from every direction. The air suddenly felt heavier. The forest, which moments earlier had been alive with birds and insects, had fallen silent once again. The silence was worse than any sound. As they hurried away, Amara glanced over her shoulder. She froze. For the briefest moment, she saw women dressed in flowing white standing between the trees. There were at least 12 of them. Their faces were hidden beneath long veils. None of them moved. None of them blinked. The instant Amara looked directly at them, they vanished. By the time they reached home, the sun had begun to sink behind the hills. Her grandmother shut every window. She scattered white chalk across each doorway. Then she burned dried herbs whose bitter smoke filled the small hut. Amara had never seen her behave this way. Finally, the old woman sat down. Her eyes never left the crimson waist bead. Tell me everything. Amara recounted the meeting beneath the Iroko tree, the mysterious priestess, the glowing beads, the warning, the impossible disappearance. Her grandmother listened without interrupting. When the story ended, tears welled in the old woman's eyes. I feared she would return one day. Who? The keeper. You know her. I knew the stories. Amara leaned closer. What stories? Her grandmother drew a slow breath. Long before this village existed, before our grandfathers' grandfathers were born, this land belonged to women known as the daughters of the river. They were priestesses. They were far more than priestesses. They protected the balance between our world and the world beneath it. Amara frowned. The world beneath it. The spirit world. Her grandmother lowered her voice. They carried sacred waist beads. Not as ornaments. As seals. Each bead held a promise. A promise between humans and the unseen. Amara shook her head. That sounds impossible. It should. But impossible things have happened before. The old woman reached toward the waist bead but stopped just short of touching it. There was one set unlike all the others. The crimson thread. Amara instinctively looked down. The one I'm wearing? Her grandmother nodded. It was never meant for ordinary people. Hundreds of years ago, she explained, a terrible drought had nearly destroyed the kingdom. The rivers dried. The crops failed. Children starved. People begged the spirits for mercy. The keeper of threads made a bargain. The river spirits would restore life to the land. In return, one guardian from every generation would wear the crimson thread. Their soul would remain tied to both worlds. Human? Yet never fully human again. For generations the agreement protected the land. Until one guardian broke the oldest rule. She removed the waist bead. That single act shattered the balance. According to legend, the guardian disappeared. The keeper vanished. The crimson thread was lost. And the spirits began wandering freely through forgotten places. Everyone believed the waist bead had been destroyed. Her grandmother looked at Amara. It wasn't. It was waiting. Amara laughed nervously. So you're saying I've become some ancient guardian because an old woman tied beads around my waist? I am saying, her grandmother replied quietly, that the spirits have chosen you. Amara stood. No. I don't believe any of this. She stormed outside. The cool evening air should have calmed her. Instead, she heard the drums again. Boom. 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 They sounded closer than ever. She turned. No one. Only the empty path leading through the village. Children played nearby. Women cooked over open fires. No one else reacted. She approached an elderly man carrying water. Can you hear those drums? He looked confused. What drums? They're right there. I hear nothing. He continued walking. Amara's heartbeat quickened. The sound followed her everywhere she went. Yet she alone could hear it. That night the dreams returned. Only this time they were clearer. She stood beside a wide river beneath a sky without stars. The water flowed backward. Dozens of women waited silently on the opposite bank. Among them stood the old priestess. She no longer looked ancient. She appeared young. Beautiful. Powerful. Her white robe shimmered like moonlight. You're late, she said. Amara frowned. This is a dream. The priestess smiled. No. This is memory. What do you mean? You are standing where the first promise was made. Amara looked around. I've never been here. You have. You simply do not remember. The river suddenly turned crimson. The women began chanting. One by one they disappeared beneath the water without making a sound. Not drowning. Simply melting into the river itself. Amara gasped. What is happening? They are returning. Returning where? The priestess looked directly at her. They're waiting for you. Amara took a step backward. I don't understand. You will. When the seventh night arrives. Before Amara could ask another question, she woke. Her room was freezing. Every clay pot inside the house had cracked. The cooking fire had gone out. Most terrifying of all, the floor around her sleeping mat was soaking wet. As though someone had poured river water all around her while she slept. Her mother entered moments later. How did all this water get in here? Amara had no answer. Her mother frowned. It didn't even rain. The following morning the village gathered beneath the giant baobab tree. Word had spread. Livestock were disappearing. 3 goats. 2 sheep. A hunting dog. None had left tracks. None had been found. The village chief addressed everyone. Something walks our forests. We do not know what. No one should travel alone after sunset. The villagers nodded anxiously. As Amara turned to leave, she noticed several people staring at her. Not at her face. At her waist. Although her dress completely covered the beads. It was as if they somehow sensed them. She hurried away. Later that afternoon, her best friend Ada arrived carrying a basket of roasted groundnuts. "You've been hiding from everyone." "I've just been busy." Ada narrowed her eyes. "No. You're afraid." Amara forced a smile. "I'm fine." Ada reached for her hand. The instant their fingers touched, Ada screamed. The basket fell. Groundnuts scattered across the ground. "What happened?" Ada stared at Amara in horror. "Your hand." "My hand." It was ice cold. Ada's breathing became uneven. And what?" "I saw someone standing behind you." Amara slowly turned. No one. There was a woman. Dressed in white. She was smiling. Amara felt every hair on her body stand up. What did she look like? "I couldn't see her face." Ada backed away. "Who have you been talking to?" "I." Before Amara could answer, Ada fled. Without looking back. That evening her grandmother made another discovery. While washing clothes beside the river, she noticed something impossible. Tiny crimson beads lay scattered beneath the water. Dozens of them. Exactly like the ones around Amara's waist. When she reached down to pick one up, the bead dissolved into blood. The river instantly carried it away. The old woman ran home. She burst through the doorway. "We don't have much time." Amara stood immediately. "What happened?" "The river has awakened." "What does that mean?" Her grandmother's voice shook. "It means the spirits know where you are." Before Amara could respond, a loud knock echoed through the hut. 3 slow knocks. Talk, talk, talk. Everyone inside froze. Her mother walked toward the door. Her grandmother shouted, "Don't open it." Another 3 knocks. Talk, talk, talk. A woman's voice drifted through the wood. Soft, gentle, almost familiar. "Amara." The young woman stopped breathing. Only 3 people in the house knew she was inside. Then the voice spoke again. "Amara. I know you're there." Her grandmother whispered, "Whatever happens, do not answer." The knocking stopped. Silence returned. Nearly 5 minutes passed. No one moved. Finally, Amara's mother slowly opened the door. No one stood outside. Only wet footprints. Bare footprints. Leading away from the hut. Toward the river. But halfway there, the footprints simply ended. As though whoever made them had vanished into thin air. That night, none of them slept. Just before dawn, as the first rooster crowed, Amara looked down at her waist. One of the crimson beads had cracked. And somewhere beyond the village, the drums began beating again, louder than ever before. The tiny crack in the crimson bead should have been impossible. Amara rubbed her fingers across it again and again, hoping it was only a scratch. It wasn't. The smooth surface had split clean through the center, revealing a faint silver light that pulsed beneath it like the heartbeat of a living creature. Her grandmother saw it and immediately dropped the clay bowl she was holding. It shattered across the floor. "The 7th night has begun." Amara looked up. "You've said that twice now. What happens on the 7th night?" For a long moment, the old woman said nothing. When she finally spoke, her voice sounded distant. "The spirits will ask for what was promised. And if I refuse?" They never asked twice. The entire village seemed different that morning. A thick mist rolled across the fields even though the sun was already high in the sky. Dogs whimpered instead of barking. The chickens refused to leave their coops. Even the elders, who normally gathered beneath the baobab tree to settle disputes, remained inside their homes. Something unseen had settled over Kuala. People could feel it. No one could explain it. By midday, another strange event shook the village. A young hunter named Kofi came running from the forest, his face drained of color. He collapsed in the center of the market. "I saw them," he gasped. "The women in white." The villagers crowded around him. "What women?" "They were walking across the river." "The river?" "They weren't swimming. They were walking, on the water." An elder frowned. "What did they want?" Kofi's lips trembled. "They weren't looking at me. They were all looking toward Amara's house." Silence spread through the crowd. Slowly, every pair of eyes turned toward the path leading to Amara's home. Inside the hut, Amara could no longer ignore the strange changes within herself. She had not eaten since the previous morning. Yet she felt no hunger. She had not slept. Yet she felt no exhaustion. Her hearing had become unnaturally sharp. She could hear conversations from neighboring compounds. She could hear insects crawling beneath the floor. Most disturbing of all, she could hear whispers that no one else seemed to notice. Some begged. Some laughed. Some simply repeated her name. Amara. Amara. Come back. Whenever she covered her ears, the voices only became louder. That evening, her grandmother led her to the oldest part of the village. Hidden behind tangled vines stood a forgotten shrine. Its roof had long since collapsed. Ancient carvings covered the stone walls. Women wearing waist beads. Rivers flowing upward into the sky. A giant serpent coiled around a tree whose roots reached the clouds. Amara stared at one particular carving. It showed a young woman standing before an old priestess. The priestess was tying a waist bead around her waist. The resemblance was unmistakable. That's her. Her grandmother nodded. The keeper. And this girl. Her grandmother closed her eyes. No one remembers her name. Amara stepped closer. Then she froze. The stone face of the young woman looked exactly like her. Not similar. Exactly. Even the tiny birthmark near her left eyebrow had been carved into the stone. She stumbled backward. How is this possible? Her grandmother whispered. Perhaps this isn't the first time your soul has walked this path. That night, Amara dreamed again. But this time, she knew she was dreaming. She stood once more beside the crimson river. The keeper was waiting. You've come. I didn't choose to. The priestess smiled sadly. None of us did. Amara folded her arms. Tell me the truth. All of it. The keeper looked toward the river. It began with love. Amara frowned. Love. There was once a guardian who broke her sacred oath. Not for power. Not for greed. For love. The river rippled. Images began forming on its surface. A young guardian removed her crimson waist bead. A young hunter embraced her. For one beautiful night, they lived as ordinary people. But before dawn, the sky turned black. The rivers overflowed. The boundary between the worlds shattered. Spirits crossed into the land of humans. Humans disappeared into the spirit realm. Hundreds died. To stop the destruction, the guardian sacrificed herself. Her body vanished. Her soul remained trapped between both worlds forever. The promise was restored, the keeper whispered. But at a terrible price. Amara looked into the river. The guardian. Was she? The keeper nodded. My daughter. Silence filled the air. I have searched for someone worthy ever since. You chose me? No. The crimson thread chose you. Amara awoke with tears on her face. She had never met the keeper's daughter. Yet somehow, she mourned her. Later that day, the village chief summoned everyone. His voice carried across the square. No one is to leave their homes after sunset. The spirits have crossed the river. Some villagers laughed nervously. Others made protective signs. Then an old blind woman stepped forward. She had not left her hut in nearly 20 years. Yet now she walked without assistance. She pointed directly toward Amara. The river remembers her. Gasps echoed through the crowd. The moon has found its daughter. The blind woman smiled. And death has found its door. She collapsed before anyone could reach her. When they lifted her body, she was gone. Only her clothes remained. Panic spread through Kuala. Families packed belongings. Some attempted to flee before nightfall. None succeeded. Every road leaving the village somehow led them back to the same place. No matter which direction they traveled, they returned to the baobab tree. It was as though the village itself had become trapped. As darkness fell, the drums returned. Not one drum. Hundreds. The sound shook the earth. Boom, boom, boom. Then came the singing. Soft. Beautiful. Terrifying. Women's voices floated through the night. They were singing in a language no one recognized. Yet somehow, everyone understood the meaning. We have come. The villagers barred their doors. Parents held their children close. Oil lamps flickered. No one dared step outside. Except Amara. Something was calling her. Not with words. With memory. She found herself walking toward the river without realizing she had left the house. Bare feet. Empty eyes. The crimson waist bead glowed beneath her clothing. Halfway there, someone grabbed her arm. It was Ada. Her terrified friend. What are you doing? Amara blinked. She hadn't realized where she was. You were walking like you were asleep. Ada looked toward the river. Her face turned pale. Across the water, hundreds of women in white stood silently. This time, they were not hiding. Moonlight reflected through their transparent bodies. Each wore a crimson waist bead. Each stared directly at Amara. Ada whispered, "They're real." The women slowly raised one hand together, as though inviting Amara to join them. Then, the cracked bead around Amara's waist broke completely. A sharp snap echoed through the night. Every spirit smiled. At once, the world went silent. No drums. No insects. No wind. The keeper suddenly appeared beside Amara. For the first time, fear filled the old priestess's face. She whispered only 4 words. "Do not look behind you." Amara remembered those exact words from the forest. "If it breaks, do not look behind you." She squeezed her eyes shut. But then, she heard a voice. A voice she hadn't heard in 3 years. Amara. Her father's voice. Soft. Gentle. Exactly as she remembered. "My daughter." Tears streamed down her face. "Dad. I've been waiting." Her entire body shook. She knew what the keeper had said. She knew the warning. But the voice sounded so real. "I've missed you." Her heart broke. Slowly, almost against her own will, Amara began to turn. Amara's body trembled. Her father's voice came again. Closer. Filled with warmth. "My daughter. You've searched for me for so long. I've finally come home." Every memory she had fought to bury came rushing back. The mornings he carried her on his shoulders to the river. The evenings he carved little wooden birds for her. The promise he had made before leaving for the forest 3 years earlier. "I'll be back before sunset." He never returned. She had spent every night since then wondering if he had suffered. Wondering if he had called her name before he died. Now, his voice was only a few steps behind her. One turn. One glance. That was all it would take. The keeper stood frozen. For the first time since Amara had met her, the ancient priestess looked powerless. "Do not turn." The spirits across the river remained perfectly still. Their smiles never faded. They were waiting. Not for Amara's decision. For her weakness. Amara shut her eyes tightly. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I just want to see him." The keeper stepped closer. "So did every guardian before you." Amara's breathing became uneven. "What if it really is him?" The old priestess answered gently. "If your father loved you, he would never ask you to break the promise." Those words struck Amara harder than any blow. She remembered her father teaching her as a child. Real love protects. It never demands that you destroy yourself. The voice behind her changed. "My daughter." It sounded slightly different now. Less gentle. More desperate. "Turn around. I need your help." Amara remained facing the river. The voice became angry. "You abandoned me. You let me die." Her heart pounded. The keeper whispered, "It knows your grief. It is wearing it." Suddenly, the voice disappeared. A deafening silence covered the river. Then every spirit woman took one step forward. Their bare feet touched the water. Instead of sinking, the river hardened beneath them like polished glass. They walked toward the shore. Hundreds of them. Without making a sound. The villagers watched from the safety of their huts. Some prayed. Some cried. Some could only stare in horror. As the first spirit reached the riverbank, the ground shook violently. Cracks spread through the earth. The great baobab tree groaned. Its enormous branches bent toward the river as though bowing before unseen royalty. The keeper raised both hands. Her white robes began glowing with brilliant silver light. For the first time, Amara saw her true form. She no longer appeared as an old woman. She stood tall and radiant. Her silver hair floated like flowing water. The countless charms around her neck shimmered with ancient symbols. She looked less like a human, and more like something the world itself had created. The spirit stopped walking. One stepped forward. Unlike the others, her veil slowly lifted. It was the face of a young woman. Beautiful. Peaceful. Yet filled with endless sadness. The keeper whispered, "My daughter." The young spirit smiled. "Mother." Even after centuries apart, love still lingered between them. The spirit spoke softly. "The promise is breaking. I know. The worlds cannot remain separated much longer. I know. There is only one way." The keeper lowered her head. "I know." Amara looked between them. "What are you talking about?" The young spirit turned toward her. The crimson thread cannot exist with a broken bead. It must be remade. How? The spirit smiled sadly. It must be tied with a willing heart. Amara frowned. I don't understand. The keeper closed her eyes. The thread is not repaired with string. It is repaired with sacrifice. Silence followed. Then realization slowly spread across Amara's face. No. The keeper looked at her with tears in her eyes. I searched for another way. For centuries. There isn't one. The river began overflowing. Water climbed onto the land without flooding it. It moved like living hands. The spirits behind the keeper's daughter began fading in and out of existence. The boundary between worlds was collapsing. The sky darkened even though dawn was approaching. Birds fell silent. Every lantern in the village extinguished at once. The earth itself seemed to hold its breath. Amara looked toward the frightened villagers gathered behind their doors. Children clung to their mothers. Old men whispered prayers. Her own mother stood crying silently. Her grandmother smiled through tears. Not because she was happy. Because she finally understood. The old stories had never been warnings meant to inspire fear. They were memories. Memories of ordinary people who had chosen everyone else before themselves. Amara took a slow breath. She looked at the keeper. If I do this, will my family be safe? Yes. The village? Yes. The spirits? They will finally rest. And me? The keeper could not answer. She didn't need to. Amara already knew. She untied the broken crimson waist bead. For the first time, the knot loosened effortlessly. The beads fell into her hands. They no longer glowed. They looked like ordinary crimson stones. The young spirit approached. She gently placed her own transparent hands over Amara's. I was afraid too. Amara smiled weakly. Were you? I cried until the very end. But courage isn't the absence of fear. It is choosing what matters more. Amara nodded. She closed her fingers around the broken beads. Then stepped into the river. The water was warm. Like an embrace. Not cold. Not frightening. Peaceful. The river rose around her ankles. Then her knees. Then her waist. The crimson beads suddenly burst into brilliant light. One by one. Every broken bead repaired itself. A new thread appeared. Brighter than before. Stronger. The keeper began chanting in an ancient language. The spirits joined her. Their voices echoed across the valley. The river shone like liquid moonlight. A great wind swept through the village. Every tree bent. Every flame reignited. Every cracked wall repaired itself before the villagers' eyes. The darkness in the sky slowly dissolved. Sunlight broke through the clouds. Then, everything stopped. The river became still. The spirits smiled. One after another, they dissolved into thousands of glowing lights that floated upward like fireflies before disappearing into the morning sky. The keeper looked at Amara one last time. You have done what even I could not. You ended the waiting. For the first time in centuries, she smiled without sorrow. Then she too vanished. Only silence remained. When the villagers finally approached the river, Amara was gone. There was no body. No footprints. No sign she had ever entered the water. Only one perfectly restored crimson waist bead rested upon a smooth stone. Her grandmother picked it up carefully. This time, it felt cold. Empty. Its purpose had ended. Years passed. The strange happenings in Kuala disappeared. Children once again laughed beside the river. Hunters returned safely from the forest. The drums were never heard again. Travelers who passed through the village often noticed something unusual. Every dawn, a young woman dressed in white could sometimes be seen standing ankle-deep in the river. She smiled at anyone who looked her way. But the moment someone blinked, she disappeared. The elders never feared her. Instead, they bowed their heads with respect. Because they knew. Some promises do not become chains. They become protection. From that day forward, mothers in Kuala taught their daughters a lesson that survived for generations. They would hold a simple string of waist beads in their hands and say, "Adornment is beautiful, but never forget that true beauty has always been found in wisdom, character, and the promises we choose to keep." And whenever a child asked whether the story of the mysterious priestess was true, the elders would simply smile and answer, "Some stories are not told because they happened. They are told so that, if such a choice ever comes before you, your heart will already know the right path." This tale teaches us that The greatest strength is not found in power or beauty, but in integrity. A person who keeps their word, even when it is difficult, leaves behind a legacy that protects others long after they are gone. Fear can deceive, grief can tempt, and appearances can mislead, but wisdom, courage, and selfless love are the virtues that endure across generations. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story and would like to see a sequel, comment sequel in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you'll be the first to know when the next episode drops. Have a lovely day.